Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Megan, and this channel is all about the Immanuel approach, becoming aware of the living, active presence of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit through gratitude and appreciation. And it's such a joy to be with you. We are relational beings simply because of our relational God. Our God is a communal God, three in one, totally unified and also very distinct in their personalities. And they are wonderful. We get to connect with them and be aware of their presence through these practices. And it's such an engaging, exciting way to live. So, in my last episode, we talked about secure attachment. And I don't know if you remember the 3 S's of secure attachment from Dan Siegel, Dr. Dan Siegel. So, it's safety, uh, being seen, and being soothed. Some of the hallmarks of secure attachment. In this episode, we're going to talk about the 2 major types of insecure attachment and how they affect our relationship with Immanuel. And so before we jump in, I just want to give you a little heads up that sometimes when we're talking about some of these things, you can notice some pain. And so I just want to tell you that if you do, just become aware of that, and just you can put your hand on your heart. And yes, I'm aware of that. You could take a few deep breaths. Just make sure that you are able to be present while you're listening. If you're not, that's totally fine. Just pause, take some deep breaths, soothe yourself, calm. Um, I have a lot of practices that could help you do that, but just taking time to soothe yourself, because this can be kind of triggering at times to hear about these insecure attachments. So just notice if one of these resonate with you. Now, many of us have, a different type of attachment with one of our primary caregivers. So if we had, we might have one type of attachment with our mom, a different type of attachment with our dad, or so we have a little bit of both in us for sure. And so one thing I really loved is this idea from Dr. Dan Siegel that he talked about one of the things that can help us, even if we have an insecure attachment, is if we had one person that we felt we were inside their heart, like someone who looked out for us, even if it wasn't our primary caregiver, but it could have been a teacher or a neighbor or an auntie or an uncle who just you were in their heart. That often can protect us from some of the negative aspects of the insecure attachment. So also notice that if you remember someone who looked out for you during this time. So the first one that I am going to talk to you about is the anxious ambivalent attachment, or the anxious attachment. It's insecure attachment. This is one of my primary attachments, and it's sometimes the primary caregiver would respond to the child's needs, and sometimes they wouldn't. And what that does is creates a wariness and a distress. They're not able to be soothed by the primary caregiver. It often can create anxiety. It's very inconsistent. Or the primary caregiver could be intrusive and then inconsistent. Oftentimes, the child is required to meet the needs of the primary caregiver rather than the other way around. So just so you know, always, 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 it's always the responsibility of the parent to meet the needs of the child. The child should not be meeting the needs of the parent until it's an appropriate time, like when the parent is elderly or later in life when the parent has a need and the child is to full maturity. But as children, we are not supposed to be taking care of our parents emotionally, physically, anything like that. It's always parents taking care of children. So in this attachment style, the child quickly picks up that they need to take care of the needs of the parent and kind of meet the needs of the parent. And I'm just going to tell you, this is just scratching the surface of this insecure attachment. The narrative of the anxious ambivalent attachment is I need others, but I can't depend on them. I crave intimacy and closeness, but I actually fear abandonment and rejection. So yes, this is a very hard, attachment style for sure, and very difficult. And it does affect how we relate to God. So what would that look like? So someone with this attachment style might not feel that they can count on God. God may feel unpredictable. They may feel anxiety and fear and very preoccupied. Does he love me? Does he not love me? Is he going to show up for me? Is he not going to show up for me? Real highs and real lows with God, and anticipates abandonment and has a very fragile relationship with God. So I just want to give you a moment to consider that, because so many times we just are so hard on ourselves because we don't have this perfect relationship with the Lord, and we may struggle with some of these things. And rather than us being at fault, could you entertain the idea that perhaps it's your attachment style? That this is how you were trained to relate to your primary caregiver, because your primary caregiver may not have been aware of their own attachment needs. So just take a moment and consider, but this deeply affects our relationship with God. And I think that was one of the most hopeful things that I experienced when I heard about this, is because I realized, oh, we can heal. And so if you hear anything in this video, we can heal our attachment. And so this should give you hope, even in the midst of feeling maybe some pain and recognition, like that resonates with me, that relates to me. So anxious ambivalent is where you're constantly worried about your relationships. You really want relationships, but you're not sure. Sometimes people show up for you. Sometimes you feel like people aren't showing up for you. And so that deeply affects our relationship with God. So there are actually three attachment styles, but I'm just going to focus on the two most common attachment styles. The second one is an avoidant attachment. And so what this meant is that the primary caregiver did not respond to the child's signals in a reliable and sensitive manner. They actually maybe ignored the signals. So infants give signals when they're hungry, when they're tired, when they're upset, and they need soothing. The primary caregiver was indifferent to the child's distress, and the infant learns to take care of one's needs at a very, very young age. The primary caregiver would be dismissive of the child's needs, disconnected from emotions. This is what happens because emotions are too painful. The child disconnects from emotions. They're more comfortable with relational distance. And the narrative of an avoidant attachment is I am alone and I am on my own. I definitely relate to that as well. And how does this affect our relationship with God? An avoidant attachment has a very cerebral relationship with God, which it means very left brain, intellectual relationship with God. Possible difficulty in experiencing any warmth or closeness with God. Difficulty feeling longings and emotions, bringing emotions to God, and difficulty with connecting emotionally with God. So they're quite emotionally shut down because it was too painful to have any feelings, because they were not attuned to, they were not seen, they were not soothed. And so again, let's just take a moment and say, do I resonate with that? Is any part of that resonate with me? I definitely know that I am alone and on my own was my narrative. And so I definitely have some avoidant attachment along with the anxious attachment, which is a beautiful cocktail. But again, I want to remind you that despite the pain and the sorrow over that, there is ability to heal. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the two types of knowledge that we have about God. We have the intellectual knowledge and we have the experiential knowledge of God. And you might think, why are we talking about this? So the intellectual knowledge about God is, I know in my head that God is loving. The experiential knowledge of God is, you feel in your heart, you experience that God is loving. And it's how you experience God as opposed to what you might know about God. And here is the big question. Is there a disconnect for you? There definitely was for me. The two did not line up, and there was a cognitive dissonance because I believed what I believed, was for the most part pretty accurate. But what I felt was entirely different. And that is a clue to us that it's probably pointing to our attachment style. And so, again, I'm going to repeat it the whole time. The good news is that you can heal. And the whole goal is to synchronize these two types of knowledge, your intellectual knowledge and your experiential knowledge, to synchronize them. And so that and that's basically what happens in the left and the right brain. Isn't that amazing? And through the Immanuel approach and Immanuel lifestyle, these practices help us to synchronize our brain and bring these two into alignment so there's no longer a disconnect. And we also can heal our attachment style. So Adam Young, I highly recommend checking out Adam Young. He has a podcast. He's a counselor. He says the key to healing is connection. And I wholeheartedly agree. And there's a lot of ways that we can be in connection, particularly repeated connection times with Immanuel, through appreciation, through Immanuel journaling, through Immanuel prayer sessions. This builds and cultivates secure attachment. Feeling that gratitude, that emotion, that appreciation, just slowly but surely will bring healing and give you an earned, secure attachment. And that's going to be the subject of our next episode, is what is it like to have an earned, secure attachment? And so we can just ask him in all manner of ways, how do you want to connect with me in this? And even now, after this episode, you might be feeling all kinds of things. Ask him, take some time. How do you want to connect with me in hearing about this attachment stuff that's that's hard to hear when I resonate with certain things in here. So, a final question is, what if your style of relating to God has more to do with your attachment that was set down by the time that you were 2 years old, before you were even aware? What if it has more to do with that than you doing something wrong, you feeling guilty, you feeling at fault? I'm here to tell you the good news is that that's probably the case. And I will say that so many of the Christians I know and the clients I see battle so much with guilt and shame. And I have so much to say about that. First of all, you're not living the gospel if you are under so much guilt and shame. The true gospel, because there's some gospels out there that actually do not represent Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And so take a moment and consider what you know about the gospel. Do you know the true gospel? And the other thing is that we can heal our attachment style, and in that we will heal our relationship with God and come to know him as he truly is without the obstacles of guilt and shame. That is exactly what the Immanuel approach and lifestyle is all about, is connecting and becoming aware of the presence of Immanuel, who is always loving, always attentive, always attuned, always safe, and removing any obstacles or hindrances that get in the way of us seeing who he truly, truly is. And guilt and shame and being hard on ourselves are obstacles to us truly experiencing the deep, deep, abiding love of Father, Son, and Spirit. So I'm so glad to be with you. Please let me know what resonated with you the most in this video, and stay tuned for the next episode that is all about the earned secure attachment, as well as a bonus episode with a precious woman from Life Model Works, Marlene. I'm so excited. Stay tuned to hear that interview. Thanks for being here.